The night sky above Chicago fractured like glass. Reality itself screamed as something impossible tore through the membrane separating dimensions. Physicists would later describe it as a localized quantum singularity. Mystics would call it a doorway from hell. Neither would be entirely wrong. The rift burned with colors that shouldn't exist, ethereal flames that consumed nothing yet radiated heat that warped the air for blocks in every direction. From that burning wound in space, a roar echoed, not the mechanical growl of an engine, but something primal and terrible that resonated in the bones of every living thing that heard it. Then came the motorcycle. It emerged wreathed in hellfire, wheels spinning across nothing but air as it descended toward the city. The bike itself seemed forged from damnation, black metal that drank light, chrome that reflected only flames, and an engine that pulsed with supernatural fury. But it was the rider that made hardened criminals freeze in their tracks, and devout believers fall to their knees in prayer. The flaming skull turned slowly, surveying this new world with empty eye sockets that somehow still managed to see everything. Hellfire wreathed the skeletal form, dancing across black leather and chains that rattled with the weight of judgment itself. The ghost rider had arrived, and reality itself bent to accommodate his presence. Johnny Blaze, or what remained of him beneath the spirit of vengeance, had no idea where he was. One moment he'd been pursuing a demon through the back roads of Arizona. The next he'd felt something pull at the very fabric of his curse. Mephisto's laughter had echoed through his mind as dimensional barriers shattered, and then he was falling through a kaleidoscope of realities until he crashed into this one. The rider's supernatural senses expanded outward, tasting this new world. Immediately, something felt wrong. Not wrong like a demon's presence or a soul in torment. Wrong like a cancer hiding beneath healthy skin. This world reeked of hidden evil, of sins buried so deep that those who committed them had forgotten they were sins at all. The motorcycle touched down in the middle of a street, asphalt cracking and melting beneath wheels that burned with hellfire. Cars screeched to a halt. Pedestrians screamed and ran. Phones emerged by the dozen, recording the impossible sight. The ghost rider sat motionless, skull tilted upward, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he sensed it, a presence unlike anything in his home dimension. Power. Raw, overwhelming power that made the air itself feel heavier. Not demonic, not divine, but something alien and vast. The spirit of vengeance stirred with interest. Whatever that power belonged to, it had weight on its soul. Guilt. Mountains of it, buried beneath layers of self-righteousness and duty. The rider's skull turned eastward, toward where that presence lingered. The chain at his side rattled, wrapping around his skeletal hand as hellfire intensified. The engine roared, and the motorcycle launched forward with impossible acceleration, leaving a trail of supernatural fire in its wake. Across the city, in a high-rise overlooking the Chicago skyline, Nolan Grayson stood at a window reviewing intelligence reports. The Viltrumite warrior had been on Earth for 20 years, carefully cultivating his image as Omni-Man, Earth's greatest hero. His son Mark had finally developed powers, right on schedule. Everything was proceeding according to the Empire's plan. Soon, he would eliminate the Guardians of the Globe, and Earth would fall into line as another colony world. A chill ran down his spine, something that hadn't happened in over a century. Nolan's enhanced senses detected something entering the atmosphere, but not through normal means. Reality had torn, and something had come through. Something that made his Viltrumite instincts scream danger in a way nothing on Earth ever had. He activated his communicator. "This is Omni-Man. I'm detecting an anomaly downtown. Unknown threat level. Guardians, converge on my position." Within seconds, responses crackled through. The Immortal's gruff confirmation. War Woman's battle-ready acknowledgement. Red Rush's rapid-fire affirmative. The team was mobilizing. But as Omni-Man flew out the window, accelerating to supersonic speeds toward the disturbance, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had just arrived wasn't something the Guardians were prepared to face. His millennia of combat experience whispered a simple truth. Some threats couldn't be punched into submission. The Ghost Rider tore through Chicago's streets, weaving between traffic with supernatural precision. Every turn was impossible. Every acceleration defied physics. The Hellfire motorcycle didn't obey the laws of this universe because it had never been bound by physical law in the first place. People dove for cover as the flaming skeleton blazed past, but the rider harmed no one. The spirit of vengeance could sense innocence, could taste guilt on souls like blood in water. These people were bystanders, sinners perhaps in small ways, but not deserving of judgment. Not yet. But that presence he'd sensed, the one radiating buried guilt like a psychic beacon, that one had oceans of blood on his hands. The rider could feel it now, growing closer. Thousands of deaths, civilizations burning, all justified in the name of duty and empire. The spirit of vengeance howled its fury, and hellfire erupted higher around the rider's form. Above the city, 7 figures converged in the sky. The Guardians of the Globe, Earth's premier superhero team, assembled in formation. Omni-Man floated at the center, his white and red costume pristine, his expression grim. Beside him, the Immortal gripped his mace, his ancient warrior's instincts on high alert. War Woman drew her sword, the enchanted blade humming with power. Red Rush vibrated with barely contained speed. Darkwing's cape billowed in the wind. Aquarius gathered moisture from the air. Green Ghost prepared to phase. "What are we dealing with?" the Immortal asked, his voice carrying authority earned over millennia. "Unknown," Omni-Man replied, his eyes scanning the streets below. "But it's powerful. Everyone stay alert." Then they saw him. The Ghost Rider emerged from an intersection, motorcycle launching off a ramp created by a buckled street. For a moment, he was airborne, a flaming skeleton on an impossible machine, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. The rider's empty eye sockets found them immediately. Found him. Even from 100 yards away, Johnny Blaze could feel the weight of that one's sins. The one in white and red, the one the others looked to for leadership. That one was drowning in guilt, even if he'd convinced himself it was all necessary. The motorcycle landed with a crash that cratered the pavement. The Ghost Rider stood slowly, chain rattling as it unwound from his skeletal grip. When he spoke, his voice was layered. Johnny Blaze's human tones beneath the spirit of vengeance's inhuman resonance. Sinners. The word rolled across the distance like thunder, carrying weight that made even the Immortal hesitate. This wasn't some supervillain with a gimmick. This was something else entirely. Red Rush moved first, always too fast for his own good. He blurred toward the rider, intending to scout the threat with a quick pass. The Ghost Rider didn't move, didn't flinch. Red Rush circled him at supersonic speeds, analyzing, looking for weaknesses. "Guys, this thing isn't alive. No heat signature, no biological." The chain lashed out faster than even Red Rush could perceive. It wrapped around the speedster's ankle and yanked him from his trajectory. Red Rush crashed into the pavement, and before he could vibrate free, the Ghost Rider was standing over him. "Your soul burns with the innocent dead," the rider's voice echoed. "But your sins are of neglect, not malice." Live. The chain released, and Red Rush scrambled back to his teammates, shaken. "What the hell is that thing?" Omni-Man's jaw clenched. The way it had moved, the way it had spoken, this wasn't a normal Earth threat. And something about those empty eye sockets made him deeply uncomfortable, as if they were staring through his flesh directly at something he'd buried millennia ago. "Guardians," Omni-Man commanded, his voice steady despite his unease. "Defensive formation. We contain this threat, find out what it wants, and if necessary, we put it down hard." The Ghost Rider's skull tilted, and if a flaming skeleton could smile, he would have. The hellfire around his form intensified, and the chains began to glow white-hot. "You cannot contain vengeance," the rider declared, "and your reckoning has arrived." If you want to see more epic crossover battles and impossible matchups, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see face off in the comments below. This is going to get wild. The Hellfire motorcycle roared behind him, and the Ghost Rider mounted it in one fluid motion. The Guardians of the Globe prepared for battle, unaware that one of them was about to face judgment for crimes this world didn't even know he'd committed. The spirit of vengeance had found its target, and nothing, not even the most powerful man on earth, would escape what came next. The immortal struck first. Millennia of combat experience screamed at him to end this quickly. Whatever this flaming entity was, it radiated wrongness, not evil exactly, but something ancient and implacable that didn't belong in their world. The immortal had faced demons before, had battled supernatural threats across centuries. This felt different, more fundamental, more final. He descended like a meteor, mace raised high, putting all his considerable strength behind the blow. The weapon, forged in ages past and blessed by powers long forgotten, should have shattered the rider's skull into fragments, should have ended the threat before it truly began. The mace connected with a sound like a church bell tolling. The ghost rider didn't move, didn't even turn his head. The impact that should have pulverized bone simply stopped, absorbed by something that existed beyond physical force. Hellfire flared around the point of contact, and the immortal felt heat that had nothing to do with temperature sear across his hands. Impressive weapon, the rider's layered voice observed. Forged in righteousness. Wielded by a warrior who has fought for justice across the ages. The flaming skull turned to face the immortal directly. But you have also killed in anger, in pride. In the heat of battle, you have struck down those who might have been redeemed. The immortal's eyes widened. How could this thing know that? Ancient faces flashed through his memory. Enemies he'd cut down without mercy. Fights where rage had overtaken judgment. I did what was necessary, the immortal growled, raising his mace again. Yes, the rider agreed. And you carry that weight. Your soul bears its scars with honor. The chain rattled, but he does not. The ghost rider pointed directly at Omni-Man. War Woman didn't wait for elaboration. She dove with her sword extended, the enchanted blade singing through the air. Unlike the immortal's frontal assault, she came from the side, blade aimed to decapitate. The sword, powerful enough to cut through nearly anything on earth, met the rider's neck and stopped. The blade pressed against bone that shouldn't exist, against a skeleton wrapped in hellfire and something far more primal than magic. War Woman's enhanced strength strained, but she might as well have been trying to cut through the concept of judgment itself. The ghost rider's hand shot up, catching the blade between skeletal fingers. Hellfire raced up the sword's length, but the enchanted metal resisted, divine magic warring with infernal power. For a moment, the two forces contested, ancient sorcery versus the spirit of vengeance. A warrior's soul, the rider observed, his empty eye sockets somehow conveying respect. You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Noble. He released the sword, and War Woman stumbled back. But nobility does not make you strong enough for what is coming. Aquarius struck next, pulling water from every source within blocks. Fire hydrants exploded. Water mains burst. A massive wave rose above the street, thousands of gallons converging on the Ghost Rider with crushing force. The Atlantean hero shaped it with practiced skill, forming a pressurized sphere designed to contain and drown the flaming threat. The water hit the hellfire and exploded into steam. Not gradually, instantly, as if the laws of thermodynamics had been rewritten. The Ghost Rider stood in the center of a boiling cloud, completely unaffected. Hellfire didn't obey physics. It burned what the spirit of vengeance willed it to burn. And right now, that wasn't water. Enough. Omni-Man's voice cut through the chaos. He descended rapidly, positioning himself between his teammates and the rider. His white and red uniform was pristine, his posture perfect, every inch the hero Earth believed him to be. Stand down, all of you. Let me handle this. The Guardians hesitated but obeyed, falling back to a defensive perimeter. They'd learned to trust Omni-Man's judgment. He was, after all, the most powerful among them. Nolan Grayson studied the Ghost Rider with calculating intensity. His enhanced Viltrumite vision should have been reading every detail: body temperature, muscle tension, weak points. Instead, he saw nothing. No heat signature. No biological markers. Just flames and bone, and something that made his centuries of tactical experience utterly useless. I don't know what you are, Omni-Man said, his voice carrying that perfect hero's authority he'd perfected over 2 decades. But you're causing panic and destruction. Stand down, and we can resolve this peacefully. The Ghost Rider's skull tilted, and Johnny Blaze's human consciousness stirred beneath the spirit of vengeance. Even without the supernatural senses, Johnny could have spotted the lie. The body language was wrong. Too controlled. Too perfect. This hero was performing, playing a role for an audience that couldn't see the truth. But the spirit of vengeance saw everything. You wear heroism like a mask, the rider's voice echoed across the street. But beneath it, your soul screams with the weight of genocide. Cities burned. Civilizations crushed. Billions of voices crying out in agony. And you silence them all in the name of empire. Omni-Man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Fear? Impossible. Viltrumites didn't feel fear. I don't know what you think you see. I see your soul, Viltrumite. The word came out like a curse. I see every life you've taken, every world you've conquered, every child who cried for parents you murdered. The spirit of vengeance knows guilt, and you are drowning in it. The other Guardians exchanged confused glances. Viltrumite? What was this creature talking about? Omni-Man was from Viltrum. Yes, he told them that. But he was a hero, Earth's protector. You're confused, Omni-Man said, his voice still calm, but with an edge now. I've dedicated my life to protecting Earth. Lies. The Ghost Rider stepped forward, and the pavement cracked beneath his boots. You prepare this world for conquest. You have spent 20 years studying humanity's weaknesses, waiting for the moment to strike. You will murder your allies. You will betray those who trust you. You will paint the sky red with the blood of heroes. The Immortal's grip tightened on his mace. Omni-Man, what is he talking about? Nolan's jaw clenched. This was impossible. Nothing on Earth should have been able to see through his deception. He'd hidden his true nature from telepaths, from empaths, from every form of detection Earth possessed. How could this flaming skeleton know what even Mark didn't know yet? He's trying to divide us, Omni-Man declared, addressing his team. Whatever this entity is, it's attempting to turn us against each other. Don't listen to its lies. But doubt had been planted. The other Guardians looked at Omni-Man differently now, not with suspicion yet, but with questions forming in their minds. Green Ghost phased through the street, emerging directly behind the rider. Her intangibility was her greatest weapon. She could become incorporeal, untouchable. She reached for the rider's skull, intending to phase it out of alignment with his spine, to disrupt whatever supernatural force animated him. Her fingers passed through the hellfire, and touched his skull, and couldn't phase. Green Ghost gasped as her power simply stopped working. The Ghost Rider's bone was solid beneath her hands, impossibly real despite existing beyond normal physical law. Before she could react, the skeletal hand reached back and grasped her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to hold. Your power comes from your mother's genes, the rider said softly. You fear becoming like her. Fear losing yourself to the ghost dimension. But your soul is pure, child. You fight for the innocent, and that is enough. He released her, and Green Ghost stumbled back, phasing through the street in shock. How had he known about her mother? That was classified information, buried in GDA files. Darkwing launched explosive batarangs from the air, each one precisely targeted. The Ghost Rider's chain whipped out in a blur, intercepting every projectile mid-flight and detonating them harmlessly away from civilians. The chain moved like it was alive, like it had intelligence beyond its wielder's control. Enough games, Omni-Man snarled. His patience, carefully cultivated over decades, was fraying. This entity knew too much, saw too much. It was a threat to the entire operation, to centuries of Viltrumite planning. He moved faster than the human eye could track, closing the distance in a microsecond. His fist, capable of shattering mountains, drove toward the rider's skull with force that could shatter steel. Viltrumite strength, the result of enhanced cellular structure and millennia of evolutionary pressure, behind a single devastating blow. The Ghost Rider caught the fist in his skeletal hand. Omni-Man's eyes widened in genuine shock. Nothing on Earth could stop him like this. Nothing should have been able to simply catch his punch, as if he were a child throwing a tantrum. He pushed harder, poured more strength into it, felt his smart atoms working at full capacity. The rider didn't budge. Strength without righteousness is just brutality, the spirit of vengeance intoned. Hellfire erupted around both their hands, but Omni-Man's Viltrumite physiology protected him from the heat, protected him from physical damage, but not from what came next. The Ghost Rider's empty eye sockets blazed brighter, flames intensifying until they were nearly white-hot. Omni-Man tried to pull away, tried to break the grip, but those skeletal fingers were unyielding. "You want me to release you?" the rider asked. "Then look into my eyes." "No," Omni-Man started, because something primal in him understood what was about to happen. The Ghost Rider's skull jerked forward, and their gazes locked. "Your soul is stained with innocent blood." The world exploded into fire and screaming. The penance stare activated, and Omni-Man's mind was flooded with every life he'd ever taken. Not the warriors he'd fought honorably, not the threats he'd eliminated. The innocents. The children caught in planetary bombardments. The civilians crushed beneath his fists when they'd begged for mercy. The families torn apart as Viltrum expanded its empire across the stars. He felt every death, experienced every moment of terror, lived through every second of pain from the perspective of his victims. Thousands of deaths, tens of thousands. The accumulation of a Viltrumite warrior's long life of conquest. Omni-Man screamed. The other Guardians froze, shocked by the sound. They'd never heard him make a sound like that, raw, agonized, utterly human in its suffering. The most powerful being on Earth was on his knees, still locked in the Ghost Rider's grip, trembling as something broke inside him. The penance stare lasted 3 seconds. It felt like 3 lifetimes. When the rider released him, Omni-Man collapsed to the pavement, gasping, tears streaming down his face. His invulnerable body was unmarked, but his mind, his soul, had been shattered and forced to confront every atrocity he'd committed in Viltrum's name. "What did you do to him?" the immortal demanded, raising his mace again. The Ghost Rider stood over Omni-Man's trembling form. "I showed him the truth, showed him what lies beneath the hero's mask. Your greatest protector is your greatest threat." "You're lying," War Woman said, but her voice lacked conviction. The way Omni-Man was shaking, the broken look in his eyes, that wasn't the look of a man subjected to a simple attack. That was the look of someone who'd seen hell itself. "Ask him," the rider challenged. "Ask him about the Viltrumite Empire. Ask him about his true mission on Earth. Ask him what he plans to do to all of you." The Guardians looked at each other, uncertainty spreading among them. Above, news helicopters circled, broadcasting everything to millions of viewers. The Ghost Rider's accusations, Omni-Man's breakdown, all of it captured in high definition. And in a suburban home, Mark Grayson watched his father kneel before a flaming skeleton and wondered if his entire life had been a lie. The silence that followed was broken only by Omni-Man's ragged breathing. Nolan Grayson, conqueror of worlds, Viltrumite warrior, Earth's greatest hero, remained on his knees in the cratered street, his hands trembling against the broken pavement. The penance stare had done something no physical attack ever could. It had forced him to confront the weight of his own soul. Centuries of justified conquest, of righteous expansion in Viltrum's name, suddenly felt like chains dragging him into an abyss. "Nolan." The immortal's voice was cautious, uncertain. In all their years fighting together, he'd never seen Omni-Man like this. Vulnerable, broken. What is he talking about? What mission? Omni-Man looked up, and for the first time, the other Guardians saw something in his eyes they'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Not of physical harm. Viltrumites didn't fear death, but of exposure. Of truth. His voice cracked. The perfect hero's composure was gone, burned away by hellfire that touched the soul rather than flesh. "You don't understand. The Empire, It was supposed to be for the greater good. Order. Peace through strength. What empire? War Woman demanded, her sword still drawn. Omni-Man, talk to us. What did this thing show you? The Ghost Rider stood motionless, watching. Johnny Blaze's consciousness stirred beneath the spirit of vengeance, recognizing this moment. This was the crossroads, where truth could either destroy or redeem. The spirit existed to punish, but Johnny still believed people could change. Tell them, the rider commanded, his voice softer now, but no less absolute. Tell them who you really are, what you've done, what you were sent here to do. Omni-Man's hands clenched into fists, cracking the pavement further. Every Viltrumite instinct screamed at him to attack, to eliminate this threat, to silence the truth before it could spread. But the penance stare had left him raw, exposed. The justifications he'd built over centuries felt hollow now, transparent lies he'd told himself to sleep at night. Above them, Red Rush vibrated with barely contained energy. This is crazy. Omni-Man has saved the world a dozen times. He's a hero. Heroes don't have thousands of innocent deaths on their conscience, the Ghost Rider replied. Heroes don't spend decades preparing a planet for conquest. Conquest. Green Ghost whispered, horror dawning in her voice. Omni-Man, please tell us he's wrong. The news helicopters circled closer, their cameras capturing every moment. Across the world, millions watched. In the GDA headquarters, Director Cecil Stedman stared at the monitors, his mind racing through contingency plans. In a suburban living room, Mark Grayson felt his world tilting on its axis as he watched his father's mass crack. I was sent here by the Viltrumite Empire, Omni-Man finally said, each word seeming to cost him something. 20 years ago, my mission was to integrate into Earth's society, study your weaknesses, wait for the right moment to eliminate your greatest heroes, and prepare the planet for annexation. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No, Darkwing said flatly. That's not possible. You've fought beside us for years. You've saved millions of lives. To maintain my cover, Omni-Man continued, and now that the dam had broken, the words poured out. To earn your trust. To position myself perfectly for when the time came to strike. Everything was calculated. Every rescue. Every smile. Every friendship. His voice broke. Even my family. The Immortal's face hardened. Your family? Mark. My son was part of the plan, Omni-Man admitted, and something in him seemed to shatter completely. A half-Viltrumite hybrid to serve the Empire. To continue my work if I fell. It was all according to protocol. War Woman's sword lowered slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to betrayal to cold fury. You used us. All of us. I convinced myself it was necessary, Omni-Man said, meeting her eyes. Viltrum brings order to chaos. We end wars, eliminate poverty, create peace through superior strength. I told myself Earth would be better under our control, that humanity's short lifespans and petty conflicts justified intervention. Justified genocide, you mean, the Immortal growled. The Ghost Rider watched this unfold with those empty, flame-filled eye sockets. The spirit of vengeance had seen confessions before, had watched souls crack under the weight of their own sins. But this was different. Most beings tried to deny, to deflect, to rage against judgment. Omni-Man was accepting it, letting the truth destroy him from within. The penance stare showed me. Omni-Man's voice was hollow now. It showed me every face, every person I killed during the expansion campaigns before Earth. The child on Telescria who called for her mother as I crushed her city. The elder on Flaxen Prime who begged me to spare his grandchildren. I heard them all, felt what they felt. He looked at his hands as if seeing blood that wouldn't wash away. I've told myself for so long that it was duty, honor, service to the Empire. But that thing, he gestured weakly at the Ghost Rider. It made me feel what I've done. Really feel it. Aquarius stepped back, water still swirling around his form defensively. How many worlds? 17, Omni-Man whispered. 17 civilizations brought into the Empire. Some peacefully, once they saw Viltrum's power. Others. He couldn't finish. And Earth. Green Ghost's voice trembled. What were you going to do to us? Omni-Man was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I was going to kill you. All of you. The Guardians represented Earth's best defense. Once you were eliminated, humanity would have no chance against a Viltrumite assault. I've been waiting for the right moment. Soon. It was supposed to be soon. The Immortal's millennia of experience, his countless battles, his hard-won wisdom, none of it had prepared him for this. The teammate he trusted, fought beside, laughed with, was a sleeper agent for an alien empire, and had been planning their murders. We should kill you right now, the Immortal said, raising his mace. The ancient weapon trembled in his grip. For every world you've destroyed, for every life you've taken, for the betrayal of everything we stand for. Yes, Omni-Man agreed, not moving to defend himself. You should. The Ghost Rider's chain rattled, drawing all eyes. That is not your decision to make, warrior. The Immortal turned on him, anger finding a new target. You did this. You broke him, exposed him, fine. But now we deal with a threat. He is not a threat, the rider said calmly. Not anymore. Not a, War Woman's voice rose. He just admitted to planning our murders. Planning, the Ghost Rider emphasized. Past tense. The penance stare doesn't just show you your sins. It makes you truly understand them. Feel them as your victims felt them. Most beings who survive it are never the same. The flaming skull turned to Omni-Man. You are broken now, Viltrumite. The warrior who could slaughter the innocent without hesitation is dead. What remains? Omni-Man looked up at the rider, and there was something different in his eyes now. Not the cold calculation of a conqueror, not the false warmth of a hero playing a role. Something raw and wounded and genuinely human. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know what I am anymore. In the GDA headquarters, Cecil Stedman made a decision. Deploy the contingency teams. I want Omni-Man contained, now. Use the sonic frequency we developed. Keep him disoriented until we can figure out what the hell is happening. But before his orders could be executed, the Ghost Rider raised a skeletal hand. No, it wasn't a request. It was a statement of absolute fact. The Ghost Rider's supernatural senses expanded outward, touching every soul in a 5-mile radius. He could feel the GDA operatives moving into position, could sense their fear and determination, could feel the weapons being armed, the contingency plans activating. This reckoning is not finished, the rider declared, and it will not be interrupted by those who cannot understand what stands before them. Hellfire erupted in a circle around the Guardians and Omni-Man, a wall of supernatural flame that sent nearby vehicles skidding away. The helicopters climbed higher, cameras struggling to see through the infernal barrier. The flames didn't burn, didn't consume anything, but they were as impassable as solid steel. What is this? Darkwing demanded, his cape billowing in the heat. What are you doing? Protecting the guilty, the Ghost Rider said, and there was something almost sad in his layered voice. Because this world will want vengeance, not justice. They will want to destroy him for his crimes. But destruction solves nothing. He deserves destruction. War Woman shouted. You showed us what he is. I showed you what he was, the rider corrected. What he has done, but also what he might become. The flaming skull turned to each guardian in turn. The spirit of vengeance exists to punish the guilty. But even vengeance must sometimes ask, what serves justice? His death or his redemption? There is no redemption for genocide, the Immortal stated flatly. Perhaps not, the Ghost Rider agreed. But there is penance. There is atonement. There is the possibility that a monster might become something better. He looked at Omni-Man. You have been shown your sins. You cannot unknow them now, cannot bury them. Every face, every scream, every moment of suffering you caused, it lives in you now. Tell me, Viltrumite, can you live with that weight? Omni-Man's jaw clenched. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, the rider said. That is what makes sin possible, and what makes redemption possible. The chain unwound from his arm, stretching out to circle Omni-Man like a serpent. You can choose to end your existence, to escape the guilt. You can choose to flee Earth, to return to your empire and resume your mission. Or, Omni-Man's voice was barely a whisper. Or you can choose to atone, to spend however many centuries you have left trying to balance the scales, saving the lives you once took, protecting the innocents you once slaughtered, becoming truly the hero you pretended to be. The other Guardians exchanged looks of disbelief. "You're saying we should trust him?" Green Ghost asked. "After everything?" "I'm saying you should watch him," the rider replied. "Judge him by his actions from this moment forward. He has been marked by the penance stare. His soul carries the weight of his crimes now. He cannot forget, cannot pretend. The Ghost Rider will know if he strays from the path of atonement. And if he does," the Immortal demanded. The hellfire around the rider intensified until it was nearly blinding. "Then I will return, and there will be no mercy, no second chances, only final judgment." Omni-Man looked at the flaming skeleton, this impossible entity that had torn through his carefully constructed lies and forced him to confront the monster he'd become. Why? Why give me this chance? The Ghost Rider was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, it was Johnny Blaze's voice that came through most clearly. "Because I know what it's like to carry a curse, to be bonded to something that changes you, that makes you question who you really are. I've done terrible things under the spirit of vengeance. Hurt people I never meant to hurt, and I've spent years trying to make that right." The skeletal hand reached out, and for a moment, Johnny's humanity shone through. Everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment. Even you. The hellfire wall dissipated, revealing the world beyond. The news helicopters immediately zoomed in. GDA forces held their positions, waiting for orders. And across the planet, billions of people watched a flaming skeleton offer redemption to a would-be conqueror. "The world will want your head," the Ghost Rider warned Omni-Man. "They will fear you, hate you. You will have to prove yourself every single day, and even then, many will never forgive you." "I don't deserve forgiveness," Omni-Man said, climbing slowly to his feet. He looked diminished somehow, despite his physical power remaining intact. "But if there's a chance, if I can somehow make this right." "You can't," the rider said bluntly. "The dead stay dead. The worlds you helped conquer remain conquered. You cannot undo what you've done, but you can ensure it doesn't happen again. Here, now, on this world." The Immortal stepped forward, mace still raised. "I don't trust this. Any of it. For all we know, this is some elaborate manipulation." "Then watch him," the Ghost Rider suggested. "Place him under constant surveillance. Monitor his every action. The moment he deviates from atonement, you have my permission to end him." "We don't need your permission," War Woman said coldly. "No," the rider agreed. "But you have it anyway." He turned back to Omni-Man. "You wanted to serve a greater purpose, to bring order and peace through strength. Now you have a new purpose. Protect this world from the empire you once served. When Viltrum comes, and they will come, you will stand against them. Against everything you were raised to believe. Against your own people." Omni-Man's eyes widened. "They'll send others. Agents, warriors. When I fail to complete my mission." "Then you stop them," the Ghost Rider interrupted. "You know their tactics, their strategies, their weaknesses. Use that knowledge to save this world instead of conquering it." "That's..." Omni-Man looked to the other Guardians, seeing the betrayal and fury in their eyes. "They'll never trust me. How can I fight beside them after?" "You can't," the Immortal said flatly. "Not anymore. Whatever we had, whatever we built, it's gone." The Ghost Rider's flames flickered, almost sympathetic. "Then you fight alone. For now. Trust is earned, not given. Prove yourself through action, not words." A sound cut through the tension, the roar of approaching jets. The GDA was mobilizing in force, unwilling to wait any longer. Within seconds, the street would be swarming with troops and weapons specifically designed to contain superpowered threats. "Your time is up, Viltrumite," the Ghost Rider said. "Make your choice. Flee. fight, or atone. Omni-Man looked at the approaching forces, then at the Guardians who would never trust him again, then at the flaming skeleton who had shattered his world and somehow offered a path forward. "I'll atone," he said quietly. "However long it takes. Whatever I have to do, I'll atone." "Then start now," the rider commanded. "Go to your son. Tell him the truth before he learns it from the news. Face the hardest judgment of all, the disappointment of someone who loved you." Omni-Man flinched as if struck. Mark, his son, would see all of this, would know everything. The boy who'd looked up to him, who'd wanted to be just like him. The thought of facing Mark's betrayed eyes was almost worse than the pen and stare. "Go," the Ghost Rider repeated, "before the GDA makes you a prisoner and you lose even that chance." Omni-Man hesitated one moment longer, looking at each Guardian. "I'm sorry. I know it means nothing, but I'm sorry." Then he launched into the sky, disappearing in a sonic boom that rattled windows for miles. The Ghost Rider watched him go, then turned to the remaining Guardians. "He will return, and when he does, you will need him. A storm is coming to this world, one that will require even monsters to stand as heroes." "What storm?" the Immortal demanded. But the Ghost Rider was already walking back to his motorcycle, chain rewinding around his skeletal form. "That is not my story to tell. My purpose here was to reveal the truth, to offer judgment and, against my nature, mercy." He mounted the Hellfire bike. "Watch him. Test him. And if he fails, call my name. The Ghost Rider will return." "Wait," Green Ghost called out. "Who are you? What are you?" The flaming skull turned one last time. "I am vengeance for the innocent, judgment for the guilty, and sometimes, reluctantly, hope for the damned." The engine roared, hellfire erupted, and the Ghost Rider tore down the street, leaving a trail of supernatural flame that slowly faded into nothing. The Guardians stood in silence, processing what had just happened. Their greatest ally exposed as their greatest threat. A demon offering redemption. Their world turned upside down in minutes. "What do we do now?" Aquarius asked quietly. The Immortal lowered his mace, suddenly feeling every one of his thousands of years. "We prepare. For Omni-Man. For this Viltrumite Empire. For whatever else is coming." "And if he betrays us again?" War Woman asked. The Immortal's expression hardened. "Then we do what we should have done today. We end him." Above them, the news helicopters captured every word. And across the world, humanity learned that their greatest hero was their greatest threat, and that sometimes monsters came wearing flames and offered mercy when least expected. Mark Grayson sat on his bed, staring at the television screen with the volume muted. He'd watched the footage 17 times now. Each replay showed the same thing. His father, the strongest man on Earth, brought to his knees by a flaming skeleton, confessing to crimes that seemed impossible, admitting his entire life had been a lie. The house was too quiet. His mother, Debbie, was downstairs, also watching the news. He could hear her crying softly, the sound carrying up through the floorboards. Art and Amber had both called. He'd ignored them. What could he possibly say? The window exploded inward. Mark scrambled back as his father landed in his room, white cape billowing, uniform still pristine despite everything. But Omni-Man's face, that was different. The confident smile was gone. The unshakable composure had cracked. He looked older somehow, despite Viltrumite physiology making that nearly impossible. "Mark," Nolan said, and his voice carried a weight Mark had never heard before. "We need to talk." "I saw," Mark replied, gesturing at the television. "Everyone saw, Dad. The whole world watched you confess to." He couldn't even finish the sentence. The words felt too big, too terrible to speak aloud. Nolan moved slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. Everything that creature said was true. Was an advance agent for the Viltrumite Empire, sent here to prepare Earth for conquest. I've been lying to you, to your mother, to everyone for 20 years. Mark felt something break inside his chest. "Mom? You lied to Mom too." "I married her as part of my cover," Nolan said, and the admission seemed to physically hurt him. to appear more human, more trustworthy. But Mark, you have to understand. Understand what? Mark's voice rose, anger flooding through the shock. That your entire life here was fake? That Mom and I were just, what? Props in your mission? No. Nolan stepped closer, desperate. It started that way. God help me, it started that way. But Mark, you became real to me. Your mother became real to me. This planet, these people, somewhere along the way, it stopped being a mission and became my life. Then, why were you going to kill the Guardians? Mark demanded. Why go through with it if you cared so much? Nolan's hands clenched into fists. Because I'm a coward. Because it was easier to follow through with what I'd been trained to do than to admit I'd changed. Because questioning Viltrum means questioning everything I am. He met Mark's eyes. Until that thing, the Ghost Rider, forced me to see the truth. Mark stood, his own fists clenched. He'd recently developed his powers, inherited from his father's Viltrumite blood. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to use those powers to hit something. To break something. To make the world make sense again. What did it show you? Mark asked quietly. What did that pen and stare do? Nolan's face went pale. It showed me every person I've killed. Made me feel what they felt. Experience their fear, their pain, their final moments. His voice cracked. There was a girl on Telescria. Couldn't have been older than you. She was running from the bombardment, calling for her mother. I killed her mother hours earlier during the initial assault. And when the building collapsed, He couldn't continue. The invincible Viltrumite warrior stood in his son's bedroom, tears streaming down his face, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd suppressed for centuries. Mark felt his anger war with something else, not forgiveness, not yet, but a recognition that whatever his father had been, the man standing before him now was genuinely broken by what he'd done. The Ghost Rider said you had a choice, Mark said. He gave you a chance to atone. Yes. Nolan wiped his eyes. I don't deserve it. Don't deserve mercy or second chances or... No, you don't, Mark agreed bluntly. But he gave it to you anyway. So, what are you going to do with it? Nolan looked at his son, his half-human son, who somehow had more moral clarity than he'd possessed in 5 centuries of life. I'm going to try. To be better. To actually be the hero I pretended to be. He hesitated. But Mark, there's more you need to know. The Empire will send others when I don't complete my mission. Stronger warriors. More of them. And they won't hesitate like I did. Then we stop them, Mark said simply. We. Nolan blinked. Mark, after everything I've done, after the lies. You're still my father, Mark interrupted. I don't know if I can forgive you. Maybe I never will. But that thing was right about one thing. You know how Viltrumites think, how they fight. If they're coming, we'll need that knowledge. Nolan felt something shift in his chest. Hope, fragile and painful. You'd fight beside me? After everything. I'd fight beside Earth's defender, Mark corrected. I don't know who that is yet. But I know who it needs to be. He stepped closer. You want to atone? Then prove it. Not to me, not to the Guardians, not to the world. Prove it to yourself. Before Nolan could respond, a sound like thunder rolled across the city. Both Viltrumites turned toward the window, their enhanced hearing picking up something impossible. An engine. No, the engine. The same one they'd heard downtown. The Ghost Rider was moving again. Miles away, the Ghost Rider tore through Chicago streets, his supernatural senses drawing him toward something new. The confrontation with Omni-Man had been necessary. The Viltrumites' hidden sins had been too great to ignore. But now the spirit of vengeance detected something else. Multiple somethings. Souls tainted with casual cruelty. Beings who harmed others not for grand purposes or empire, but for entertainment, for profit, for the simple pleasure of causing pain. The motorcycle skidded around a corner, leaving hellfire tracks on the pavement. Ahead, a warehouse district. Inside one particular building, the rider sensed a gathering. 17 souls, each one stained with violence. A meeting of some kind. He crashed through the warehouse doors in an explosion of supernatural flame and twisted metal. Inside, the local chapter of the Order of the Freeing Fist, a villain organization that operated in Chicago's underworld, froze in shock. They'd been planning their next operation, a coordinated assault on 3 GDA facilities. Low-level villains mostly, but dangerous in groups. Enhanced strength here, energy projection there. Enough combined power to be a serious threat. And now a flaming skeleton stood in their midst. "What the hell is that?" someone shouted. "It's that thing from the news," another yelled. "The one that took down Omni-Man." The Ghost Rider's skull turned slowly, studying each soul in turn. Murderers, torturers, those who'd killed for money, for thrills, for no reason at all. None had the weight of Omni-Man's genocides, but each carried enough sin to warrant judgment. "Your souls are stained with innocent blood," the rider's layered voice echoed through the warehouse. "You have harmed those who could not defend themselves, profited from suffering, reveled in cruelty. We don't answer to you, freak." The leader, a man calling himself Magmaniac, unleashed a blast of superheated magma directly at the rider's skull. The hellfire around Ghost Rider's form flared, and the magma splashed harmlessly against it like water against stone. The rider didn't even flinch. "Your power comes from Earth's core," the rider observed. "You tapped into geothermal energy after your accident. Used it to kill 17 people. 12 were civilians caught in your demonstrations of power." Magmaniac's eyes widened. "How do you?" The chain lashed out, wrapping around the villain's throat. Not tight enough to kill. The spirit of vengeance had specific rules, but tight enough to lift him off his feet. "Look into my eyes," the Ghost Rider commanded. "No. Please, Their gazes locked. The penance stare activated, and Magmaniac experienced every moment of pain he'd inflicted. The businessman buried under molten rock. The security guard burned alive. The teenager caught in crossfire and left to die. All of it compressed into 3 seconds of absolute suffering. When the chain released him, Magmaniac collapsed, catatonic. His mind hadn't broken completely. The Ghost Rider was careful about that, but he'd never be the same. The weight of his sins would haunt him forever. The other villains scattered, powers activating in panic. Energy blasts, super speed, enhanced strength, all of it thrown at the Ghost Rider in a desperate attempt to escape. None of it mattered. The Ghost Rider moved through them like judgment incarnate. His chain caught a speedster mid-run, the penance stare dropping her instantly. His skeletal hands deflected energy blasts that should have vaporized steel. When a brick-enhanced villain tried to physically overpower him, the rider simply caught his fist and stared into his eyes. One by one they fell, not dead. The spirit of vengeance killed only when absolutely necessary, but broken, forced to confront what they'd done, to feel the weight of every life they'd damaged or destroyed. In 4 minutes, the entire villain cell was neutralized. The Ghost Rider stood among the unconscious, whimpering forms, hellfire casting dancing shadows across the warehouse walls. This was his purpose. This was what the spirit of vengeance existed to do. Punish the guilty, protect the innocent, serve as judgment for those who thought themselves above consequence. But something felt different now. Ever since arriving in this universe, something about the spirit felt amplified, more intense, as if this reality's fundamental nature resonated with his curse in ways his home dimension never had. The souls here seemed more vivid, the sins more pronounced, the need for vengeance more urgent. Or perhaps it was this universe's strange moral landscape. In his world, heroes and villains were generally clear-cut. Here, the greatest hero had been planning genocide. The villains weren't always evil. Some were desperate, others misguided, and beings of immense power played by rules that often ignored human suffering entirely. This was a world that needed the Ghost Rider. The sound of approaching sirens pulled him from his thoughts. GDA forces would arrive soon to collect these villains. The Ghost Rider had no desire to interact with them. Government organizations always wanted to contain, to study, to control. Better to move on. He mounted his motorcycle, ready to depart, when his supernatural senses flared a warning. Something was coming. Something powerful. The warehouse roof exploded inward as a figure descended in a shower of concrete and twisted metal. The dust cleared, revealing a woman in a white and blue costume, her expression cold and calculating. But it wasn't her appearance that made the Ghost Rider pause. It was her soul. War Woman stood among the debris, her enchanted sword drawn, her eyes locked on the Ghost Rider. "We need to talk." "The Guardian returns," the rider observed. "What do you seek?" "Answers," she replied, not lowering her blade. "You broke Omni-Man in minutes, revealed him as a traitor, offered him redemption." She stepped closer. "But you didn't explain what you are, where you came from, or why we should trust anything you say." "Trust is earned through action," the Ghost Rider said, gesturing to the unconscious villains. "I pursue the guilty. I protect the innocent." "What more must you know?" "Everything," War Woman stated. "The GDA wants you contained. The Guardians want you explained. And She paused, something flickering in her expression. "I want to know if we can believe that Omni-Man can actually change, or if you've condemned us all by letting him live." The Ghost Rider's flames flickered, considering. "You are a warrior. You have killed in battle, in service of justice. But your soul is not stained with sin. You fight to protect, not to conquer." "That's not an answer." "Then I will give you one." The rider dismounted, standing to face her directly. "I am the Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance bound to a human host. I come from another reality, pulled here by forces I do not yet understand. My purpose is absolute, to punish those who harm the innocent." War Woman processed this. "Another reality? You're saying you're from a different universe?" "Yes. And you just decided to judge Omni-Man." "I sensed his guilt from miles away," the rider explained. "Sins that deep, that numerous, they call to the spirit of vengeance like a beacon. I could no more ignore them than you could ignore a city on fire." "But you let him live," she pressed. "After showing everyone what he is, what he's done, you let him fly away." "Because death is not always justice," the Ghost Rider replied. "Sometimes, the greater punishment is to live with what you've done, to spend eternity trying to balance scales that can never truly be balanced." The flames around his skull intensified. "Omni-Man will never escape what he's done." The penitent stare ensured that. Every day, he will remember those faces, feel that weight. Death would be mercy. Atonement is agony. War Woman lowered her sword slightly. "And if he fails, if he betrays us again, then I will return, and there will be no mercy the second time." The Ghost Rider's voice carried absolute certainty. "The spirit of vengeance grants redemption once. Only once. How will you know? You said you're from another universe. Are you staying here?" The rider looked down at his skeletal hands, watching hellfire dance across bone. "I do not know. The forces that brought me here may pull me back at any moment, or I may be trapped in this reality forever." His empty eye sockets met hers. "But the spirit of vengeance transcends dimensions. If Omni-Man falls, if he returns to his conquering ways, I will know, and I will come." War Woman studied him for a long moment, warrior's instinct warring with logic. Everything about this entity defied explanation. He'd neutralized their strongest member, offered philosophical mercy, and now stood casually explaining interdimensional travel, as if it were commonplace. "The GDA won't let you roam free," she finally said. "They'll send everything they have to contain you." "They will fail," the Ghost Rider stated simply. "I am not of this world. Their weapons, their tactics, they are designed for beings bound by physics. I am bound by sin and judgment. Arrogant. Truthful." The rider mounted his motorcycle again. "But I do not seek conflict with your government. I seek only the guilty. Point me toward those who harm innocents, and we will have no quarrel." War Woman's grip tightened on her sword. "And if I try to stop you right now?" The Ghost Rider's flames dimmed slightly, not in fear, but in something almost like sadness. "Then you would fail, and I would regret the necessity of showing you why." The engine growled to life. "But you are not my enemy, warrior. Your soul burns bright with righteous purpose. Do not dim that light by defending those who deserve judgment. He paused, skull turning back toward her one more time. The Viltrumite Empire will come. Soon. When they do, you will need every ally you can find, even those you don't fully understand. The flames intensified. Consider that before you make an enemy of vengeance itself. The motorcycle roared, and the Ghost Rider launched forward, crashing through the warehouse's far wall in an explosion of hellfire and concrete. War Woman stood alone among the unconscious villains, her mind racing with implications. Another universe. Interdimensional travel. A being that operated outside normal physical law. And his warning about the Viltrumite Empire. If Omni-Man's confession was true, Earth was facing a threat unlike anything they'd encountered. She activated her communicator. This is War Woman. I need to speak with Cecil. Now. Standing by. Cecil Stedman's voice crackled through. What's your status? The Ghost Rider neutralized an entire villain cell in under 5 minutes. No fatalities, but they're all broken. Traumatized. She looked at Magmaniac's catatonic form. Cecil, we need to rethink our approach. This thing isn't something we can contain. Everything can be contained, War Woman. It's just a matter of finding the right method. No, she said firmly. You didn't see what it did to Omni-Man. What it just did here. This isn't a supervillain or alien threat. It's something else entirely. A pause on the other end. Recommendation. War Woman looked toward the hole the Ghost Rider had left in the wall, still smoking with residual hellfire. Let it go. For now. Track it, watch it, but don't engage. And if Omni-Man steps out of line. She smiled grimly. Let the demon handle it. Across the city, Mark and Nolan stood on their roof, watching hellfire trail across the Chicago skyline. He's still here, Mark observed. Still hunting. Yes, Nolan agreed. And every villain in the city is about to learn what real fear feels like. Mark glanced at his father. Think he'll come for you again? If you mess up. Nolan's expression darkened. I know he will. That's why I can't mess up. Ever. They stood in silence, watching the Ghost Rider disappear into the city night, leaving only flames and justice in his wake. Cecil Stedman stood in the Global Defense Agency's underground command center, surrounded by monitors displaying feeds from across Chicago. Satellite imagery, street cameras, news helicopters. Every angle showed the same thing, a flaming skeleton on a motorcycle, moving through the city like a force of nature. Run it again, he ordered. The technician complied, pulling up thermal imaging from the warehouse incident. The screen showed War Woman's heat signature clearly, red and orange indicating normal human body temperature. But where the Ghost Rider stood, the sensors showed something impossible, a void. Not cold, not hot, but an absence of thermal data entirely, as if the space he occupied simply refused to register. Electromagnetic readings? Cecil asked. Off the charts during active manifestation, another technician reported. But the pattern doesn't match any known energy signature. It's not radiation, not plasma, not even exotic matter. Whatever that hellfire is, it doesn't interact with our instruments in any predictable way. Cecil lit a cigarette, ignoring the no-smoking protocols. After Omni-Man's revelation, protocols felt less important than survival. And the victims? The villains he hit with that stare. Dr. Seismic entered the command center, tablet in hand. Catatonic or near catatonic. Brain scans show normal activity, but psychologically they're shattered. One of them, Magmaniac, keeps muttering about faces and fire. We've tried sedation, but he just keeps reliving something we can't see. Guilt, Cecil said quietly. The writer called it the penance stare. Makes you experience every bit of pain you've ever inflicted. That's, Dr. Seismic paused. That's not physically possible. Pain is neurological. You can't just transfer. Nothing about this is physically possible, Cecil interrupted. Which means we're dealing with something that operates outside physics. Magic, supernatural, whatever you want to call it. He turned to face the room. Recommendations. Donald Ferguson, his right hand, stepped forward. We could deploy the sonic disruptors. They worked on keeping Omni-Man disoriented in simulations. Omni-Man is vulnerable to specific frequencies because of his Viltrumite biology, Cecil countered. The Rider doesn't have biology. He's a skeleton wrapped in fire. Then we go kinetic, another agent suggested. Railguns, missile strikes, concentrated firepower. Cecil pulled up footage of the Rider catching Omni-Man's punch. He stopped the most powerful being on Earth with one hand. You really think missiles will do better? Silence fell across the command center. The uncomfortable truth was setting in. For the first time since the GDA's founding, they faced a threat they had no clear way to counter. Sir, a young analyst spoke up nervously. What if we don't try to fight him? All eyes turned to her. Explain, Cecil said. He's only targeted villains, so far. Attacked people who were actively harming innocents. Even with Omni-Man, he didn't kill him. He exposed him and offered redemption. She pulled up a comparison chart. In 6 hours, the Rider has neutralized more villain activity than we usually handle in a month. 0 civilian casualties. 0 property damage beyond what was necessary to reach his targets. He also destabilized our entire planetary defense structure, Donald pointed out. Omni-Man was our biggest asset. Omni-Man was planning to kill the Guardians and conquer Earth, the analyst shot back. The Rider saved us from that. Cecil considered this. The girl had a point. If Ghost Rider hadn't exposed Omni-Man, the Viltrumite would have executed his plan eventually. The Guardians would be dead. Earth would be vulnerable. The GDA would have been fighting a war they didn't know existed until it was too late. You're suggesting we let him operate? Cecil asked. I'm suggesting we don't make an enemy of something that could be an ally, she replied. Or at least, not an enemy. Before Cecil could respond, alarms blared across the command center. Multiple breaches detected, a technician shouted. GDA facilities in Detroit, Boston, and Miami, all under simultaneous attack. Screens flickered, showing 3 different locations. Enhanced individuals, organized and coordinated, hitting GDA installations hard. This was the attack the Order of the Freeing Fist had been planning before the Rider disrupted their Chicago cell. Casualties. Cecil demanded. 7 agents down in Detroit. Boston is holding, but requesting immediate backup. Miami's comms just went dark. Cecil's mind raced. The GDA was stretched thin. Most resources were focused on the Omni-Man situation. They didn't have the manpower to respond to 3 simultaneous attacks, not without leaving something else vulnerable. Sir, Donald said quietly, we need to make a call. Cecil knew what he meant. They had one asset in the field right now with the power to end this quickly. An asset they couldn't control, couldn't predict, but who had proven effective at neutralizing villains. He made the decision. Get me a line to the Ghost Rider. Sir, we don't have any way to. He can hear us, Cecil interrupted, looking directly at the nearest camera. Throughout the city, the Rider had shown awareness of surveillance, of being watched. If he operated on some supernatural frequency, maybe he was listening right now. Ghost Rider, if you can hear this, we have a situation. Coordinated villain attacks on 3 GDA facilities. Agents are dying. Innocent people are in danger. He paused, feeling ridiculous talking to a camera. I'm not asking you to work for us. I'm asking you to do what you came here to do. Stop the guilty from harming the innocent. Static crackled across the speakers. Then, impossibly, a voice emerged, layered, resonant, unmistakably the Ghost Riders. Your facilities are not my concern, government man. The entire command center froze. He'd heard them. Somehow, across the city, through whatever supernatural senses he possessed, the Rider had heard and responded. The agents dying in those facilities are innocent, Cecil pressed. The villains attacking them are guilty. Isn't that your entire purpose? A pause that seemed to stretch forever. Where? Cecil allowed himself a small smile. Sending coordinates now. He nodded to the technicians, who transmitted location data to every screen and broadcast frequency in the city. Whether the Rider could actually receive digital information was unclear, but received. I will handle Detroit. Your defenders must hold the other locations until I can reach them. Can you really cover all 3? Cecil asked. I am vengeance, not omnipresent. Something that might have been dark humor crept into the voice. But I am fast. The connection cut. In Detroit, the villain team had just breached the facility's third floor. They were a professional crew, specialists brought together for high-value targets. Kilcannon with his cybernetic enhancements. Furnace with her plasma generation. The Tether twins who could phase objects and people at will. They'd planned this for months. Studied patrol patterns, identified weak points, waited for the perfect moment when the GDA's attention was divided. They hadn't planned for the wall to explode inward in a shower of hellfire and brick. The Ghost Rider crashed through at full speed, motorcycle landing among them in a spray of supernatural flame. The villains scattered, powers activating instinctively. Kilcannon's arm cannon swiveled, unleashing a barrage of armor-piercing rounds. Each bullet was designed to penetrate reinforced steel, powered by military-grade propellant. The rounds hit the rider and simply stopped, flattening against bone that existed outside normal physical law. They dropped to the floor like spent casings. Interesting toys, the Ghost Rider observed, his skull turning toward Kilcannon. You built those after your discharge from the military. Used them to rob 17 banks. Killed 3 security guards who tried to stop you. Kilcannon's eyes widened behind his helmet. How do you? The chain lashed out, wrapping around both arm cannons and yanking them clean off. Not broken, torn through the cybernetic connections, as if they were paper. Kilcannon screamed as his million-dollar implants clattered to the floor. Your sins are mechanical, but your soul is still accountable, the rider stated. Furnace unleashed a plasma blast hot enough to melt titanium. The rider walked through it like rain, hellfire consuming the plasma before it could even touch his skeletal form. She stared in disbelief as he approached, each step resonating with supernatural weight. You gained your powers in an accident, the rider said. Use them to kill your business partner and his family. 11 people, including children. All for insurance money and corporate control. No, they can't prove. I don't need proof. The Ghost Rider's empty eye sockets blazed. I see souls. And yours is screaming with guilt. Their eyes met. The pennant stare hit Furnace like a physical blow. She experienced every moment of terror from her victims. The partner's family, waking to find their home engulfed in plasma fire. The children, confused and scared, calling for parents who were already dead. The agony of burning alive, over and over, compressed into 3 seconds that felt like eternity. She collapsed, unconscious before she hit the ground. The Tether twins tried to phase, to escape into the dimensional space they could access. The Ghost Rider's chain whipped out faster than thought, catching both of them mid-phase. The supernatural metal somehow existed in both dimensions simultaneously, yanking them back into reality. Your power is a gift, the rider said, holding them both by the chain. You use it to steal, to harm, to serve only yourselves. Look, 2 pennant stares delivered simultaneously. The twins experienced not just their own sins, but each other's. Every heist, every guard they'd phased through walls, every person they'd left trapped in dimensional space to suffocate. All of it shared between them. When the rider released them, they lay twitching on the floor, minds barely intact. The entire fight had lasted 90 seconds. GDA agents cautiously emerged from cover, weapons trained on the Ghost Rider. He ignored them, turning toward the motorcycle that had somehow followed him into the building despite the destroyed wall being 3 floors up. Your facility is secure, he announced. The guilty have been judged. Stand down, the ranking agent commanded. By authority of the Global Defense Agency, you are too. The Ghost Rider's skull turned toward him, and the words died in the agent's throat. Those empty eye sockets saw too much, weighed too much. Looking into them felt like standing at the edge of an abyss. I do not answer to governments, the rider stated simply. I answer to a higher law. The engine roared. 2 more locations require justice. Stay out of my way. He launched forward, crashing through another wall and descending 3 floors in a controlled fall. The motorcycle landed on the street below and tore away, leaving a trail of hellfire. The agents stood in stunned silence. Report to command. The ranking officer finally managed. Tell them Detroit is secure. And tell them we're damn lucky that thing is on our side. In Boston, the villain attack was faltering. The Guardians had arrived, Immortal and Darkwing working in concert to drive back the enhanced criminals. But there were too many, too well coordinated. For every villain they stopped, two more pressed the attack. Then hellfire lit up the Boston skyline. The Ghost Rider arrived like divine wrath, motorcycle launching off a building's roof and descending into the middle of the villain formation. Chains whipped out in all directions, catching 3 attackers simultaneously. The penance stare cycled through them rapid fire. 3 seconds each. 3 souls judged and broken in under 10 seconds. The Immortal paused mid-swing, watching the rider work. This wasn't fighting. It was execution. Methodical, precise, absolutely merciless to the guilty. Should we? Darkwing started. No, the Immortal decided. Let him finish. It took the Ghost Rider 4 minutes to neutralize the entire Boston attack force. 17 villains, all left catatonic or unconscious. Souls waited with judgment. Not one escaped. Not one received mercy. When it was done, the Rider turned to face the Guardians. Miami still requires attention, he said simply. You going to handle that too? The Immortal asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Yes. And what if we said no? What if we decided you were too dangerous to let operate? The Ghost Rider's flames flickered. Then you would be wrong. But you would try anyway, because you are a warrior, and that is your nature. The skull tilted. I do not wish to fight you, Ancient One. You carry enough burdens without adding that weight to your soul. The Immortal bristled. You don't know anything about my burdens. I know you have lived thousands of years, watched civilizations rise and fall, fought in wars that history forgot. You have killed in the name of justice, yes, but also in anger, in frustration, in the heat of battle when clearer judgment might have saved lives. The Rider stepped closer. I know because I see your soul, Abraham, and it is heavy with honorable scars. The Immortal stiffened at hearing his true name. How? The spirit of vengeance sees all, the Ghost Rider replied. Your sins are not great enough to warrant judgment, but neither are you without guilt. None of you are. His empty eye sockets swept across both heroes. That is the burden of power. It gives you the ability to help, but also to harm. To save, but also to destroy. Every choice you make echoes through eternity. Darkwing found his voice. Pretty philosophical for a demon. I am not a demon, the Rider corrected. I am judgment wearing a demon's face. There is a difference. Before either Guardian could respond, the Ghost Rider mounted his motorcycle. Miami awaits. If you wish to help, follow. If you wish to stop me, try. But do not waste time debating philosophy while innocents die. He launched forward, disappearing into the Boston streets, with hellfire trailing behind. The Immortal and Darkwing exchanged looks. I really don't like him, Darkwing muttered. Neither do I, the Immortal agreed. But damn if he isn't effective. They took to the air, following the trail of supernatural fire toward Miami. By the time they arrived, it was already over. The Ghost Rider stood among 19 unconscious villains, his hellfire casting dancing shadows across the damaged GDA facility. Not a single agent had been lost. The Rider had arrived before the attack could penetrate the facility's secure zones. Cecil's voice crackled through the Guardian's comms. Status. All 3 attacks neutralized, the Immortal reported, staring at the Ghost Rider. 0 villain escapes. 0 agent fatalities once the Rider engaged. Collateral damage? The Immortal surveyed the scene. Broken walls, scorched pavement, but minimal. Surprisingly minimal for this level of engagement. The Ghost Rider turned toward them one last time. Your government's faith in my methods is noted, though not required. I pursue the guilty. That is my nature. Whether you approve or interfere is irrelevant. What do you want? The Immortal demanded. Why are you even here? The Ghost Rider's flames dimmed slightly. I do not know. I was pulled to this universe by forces I don't understand. But while I remain, I will do what I was created to do. Punish those who harm the innocent. If that aligns with your goals, we can coexist. If not." He left the threat unspoken. The motorcycle roared, and the Ghost Rider departed into the Miami night. The immortal watched him go, 1,000 thoughts racing through his immortal mind. They had a new element in play, one they couldn't control, couldn't predict, but couldn't deny was effective. In his command center, Cecil Stedman made notes in a secure file labeled Ghost Rider. Asset or threat? After watching the Miami footage, he underlined one word: asset. Then below it he added, "for now." 3 days after the Ghost Rider's arrival, Chicago had become the quietest major city in America. Crime hadn't stopped, it never did, but it had changed. Petty theft still occurred. Drug deals still happened in dark alleys. But the violent crimes, the murders, the attacks on innocents, those had dropped to nearly zero. Word had spread through the criminal underworld faster than wildfire. There was something hunting them now. Something that couldn't be bribed, couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be killed. A flaming skeleton that saw your sins and made you live them. Mark Grayson flew patrol over the city, his red and yellow costume still feeling strange despite weeks of having powers. Below, he could see the hellfire trails, residual burns on pavement where the Ghost Rider had passed. They didn't fade like normal fire. They lingered, supernatural marks that reminded everyone what hunted in the darkness. His communicator crackled. "Invincible, this is GDA command. We have a situation." Mark sighed. He'd taken the name Invincible at his father's suggestion, before everything had fallen apart. Now it felt like a cruel joke. "What's the situation?" "Reports of a disturbance at Upstate University. Multiple witnesses describe someone matching Omni-Man's description on campus. He's talking to students." Mark's stomach clenched. His father had been laying low since the revelation, staying away from populated areas. For him to appear publicly, especially at Mark's university? "I'm on my way," Mark said, changing trajectory. He found Nolan sitting on a bench outside the science building, surrounded by a nervous crowd of students. Campus security kept their distance, hands on weapons they knew were useless. His father looked smaller somehow, despite his physical form being unchanged. He wore civilian clothes instead of his costume, and his posture lacked the confident strength Mark had always associated with him. "Dad." Mark landed nearby, drawing stares. "What are you doing here?" Nolan looked up, and Mark saw exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that came from not sleeping, not from physical exertion. Viltrumites didn't need much sleep, but when they went without, it showed. "I needed to tell the truth," Nolan said quietly. "To everyone. Not just the Guardians or the GDA, but people. Regular people who trusted me." A student stepped forward. Sarah. Mark recognized her from his physics class. "Is it true? Everything they're saying on the news? You're an alien who was going to conquer Earth." Nolan nodded slowly. "Yes. I was sent here by the Viltrumite Empire to prepare Earth for conquest. I've spent 20 years lying to everyone, building trust, so that when the time came, I could eliminate Earth's defenders and ensure an easy takeover." The crowd murmured, fear and anger mixing in their voices. "But you didn't," another student said. "That Ghost Rider thing stopped you." "No," Nolan corrected. "The Ghost Rider showed me what I'd become. Made me see the truth I'd been hiding from myself. But I could have continued, could have followed through with my mission despite the penance stare. I chose not to." "Why should we believe you?" Sarah demanded. "You lied for 20 years. Why trust anything you say now?" "You shouldn't," Nolan admitted. "Trust has to be earned. I know that now. So I'm here to tell you the truth, all of it, and let you decide for yourselves." Mark watched his father speak, answering every question with brutal honesty. Questions about Viltrum, about his past conquests, about his family. When someone asked if his marriage was real, Nolan's voice cracked as he admitted it had started as a cover, but had become the most genuine thing in his life. "Mr. Grayson." Everyone turned as a news van pulled up, cameras already rolling. The reporter rushed forward, microphone extended. Mr. Grayson, Channel 7 News. Sources say the Ghost Rider has been hunting villains across the city. Are you worried he'll come for you next? Nolan met the camera's gaze directly. I hope he does. If I stray from the path of atonement, if I show any sign of returning to what I was, then the Ghost Rider should judge me. That's the agreement. One chance at redemption. No more. And what does redemption look like for someone who's committed genocide? The question hung in the air like a blade. I don't know, Nolan said honestly. Maybe there is no redemption for what I've done. Maybe I spend the rest of my life trying to balance scales that can never be balanced. But I have to try. The alternative is to run, to hide, to pretend it never happened. And I've pretended long enough. Mark felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't the invincible hero he'd grown up idolizing. This was a broken man trying to figure out how to be better. It didn't erase what his father had done, didn't make the lies hurt less. But it was something. The interview was interrupted by screaming. A block away, something exploded. Mark was airborne instantly, his father close behind. Whatever tensions existed between them, they both moved toward danger without hesitation. The source was immediately apparent. A massive figure, easily 12 feet tall, was tearing through a shopping district. Its body seemed to be made of living metal, each movement accompanied by the screech of grinding gears. Machine Head's new enforcer, Mark identified. Reports said he was building something big. Focus on evacuation, Nolan commanded, his tactical instincts taking over. I'll engage directly. Dad, wait. But Nolan was already moving, hitting the metal giant with a punch that would have demolished a building. The construct barely staggered. Its arm swung in retaliation, and even with Viltrumite durability, the impact sent Nolan crashing through a storefront. Mark dove in, grabbing civilians and pulling them to safety. The metal giant was advancing on his father, preparing to crush him while he was down. Mark flew between them, catching the descending fist with both hands. The force drove him into the pavement, cracking concrete. Mark gritted his teeth, muscles straining. He was strong, but still new to his powers. This thing was purpose-built for destruction. Then hellfire erupted across its back. The Ghost Rider had arrived, his motorcycle somehow scaling the side of a building before launching directly at the construct. His chain wrapped around its neck, hellfire eating into the metal like acid. The giant thrashed, trying to dislodge him, but the rider held firm. This creature has no soul, the rider's voice echoed. It is a tool. But those who built it, who sent it to harm innocents, they will answer for their sins. The chain tightened, and with a supernatural wrench, the Ghost Rider tore the construct's head clean off. The body collapsed, metal limbs twitching before going still. The rider landed beside Mark and Nolan, his empty eye sockets surveying them both. For a moment, no one spoke. Viltrumite, the rider acknowledged Nolan. You wear your guilt well, but words are easy. Action matters. I know, Nolan replied, climbing to his feet. Blood trickled from his lip. The construct had actually hurt him. I'm trying. Trying is not enough. Either you atone or you fail. There is no middle ground. The rider's skull turned toward Mark. And you, young warrior, you carry your father's blood, but not his sins. Do not let his failures define your path. I won't, Mark said, though he wasn't entirely sure how to do that. The Ghost Rider's flames flickered. The one called Machine had built this creature. He operates from a fortified facility downtown. His crimes include murder, extortion, and human trafficking. Tonight, he will face judgment. Wait, Nolan said. Machine Head has defenses. Automated weapons, superhuman guards. If you go in alone. I am never alone, the rider interrupted. Vengeance walks with me. But if you wish to prove your redemption, Viltrumite, then come. Show me that your words are more than empty promises. Nolan hesitated, glancing at Mark. Go, Mark said. Prove it. Not to me, not to the world. Prove it to yourself. Nolan nodded, then turned to the Ghost Rider. I'll help. But no killing. Machine Head deserves to face justice through the legal system. The rider's flames intensified. He deserves to face what he's done. But I will defer to your human laws. This time. The two of them, Viltrumite warrior and spirit of vengeance, launched into the sky. Mark watched them go. An unlikely alliance between Earth's fallen hero and its newest judge. His communicator crackled again. Invincible, what's happening? We're reading 2 superhuman signatures heading toward Machine Head's tower. It's fine, Mark said, surprised to find he meant it. I think they're on our side. Both of them. Mark looked toward where his father had disappeared alongside a flaming skeleton. Yeah, both of them. I think. Across the city, in Machine Head's penthouse, alarms began to wail. The crime lord looked at his security feeds, seeing Hellfire and a Viltrumite approaching fast. Deploy everything, he commanded. I don't care what it costs. Stop them. But as the Ghost Rider and Omni-Man crashed through his defenses like they were paper, Machine Head realized a simple truth. There were some things money couldn't stop. Some judgments were inevitable. Machine Head's tower was a fortress. 30 stories of reinforced steel, automated defenses, and superhuman guards. The crime lord had built his empire on being untouchable, using wealth and technology to stay beyond the reach of heroes and law enforcement alike. That untouchability lasted approximately 47 seconds after Ghost Rider and Omni-Man breached the perimeter. Nolan crashed through the tower's eastern wall at supersonic speed, drawing fire from automated turrets. Energy weapons that could vaporize steel tracked his movement, unleashing devastating barrages. He weaved between the blasts with centuries of combat experience, his Viltrumite physiology absorbing the few hits that connected. The Ghost Rider took a more direct approach. He rode his motorcycle straight up the building's exterior, Hellfire wheels somehow finding purchase on the vertical surface. When gun emplacements swiveled to target him, his chain lashed out, tearing them from their mountings and sending them tumbling to the streets below. Defenses are concentrated on floors 20 through 25, Nolan reported through a commandeered security channel. Machine Head will be at the top, but we'll have to fight through his enhanced guards. Then we fight, the rider replied simply. They converged on the 23rd floor simultaneously, Nolan through a window, Ghost Rider through the wall. Inside, a dozen enhanced individuals waited. Machine Head's personal security force, each one a metahuman criminal he'd recruited, with promises of wealth and protection. The lead guard, a woman calling herself Isotope, raised glowing hands. You're making a mistake. Machine Head has connections. Legal protection. You can't just. I can, the Ghost Rider interrupted. And I will. Isotope unleashed a blast of radioactive energy. The rider walked through it like rain, Hellfire consuming the radiation harmlessly. His empty eye sockets locked onto hers. You killed your research partner to steal his work, the spirit's voice echoed. Used his discoveries to enhance yourself, then murdered his family to cover the crime. For innocence dead for your ambition. I was never convicted. I don't require convictions. The rider stepped closer. Look into my eyes. The penance stare hit her like a freight train. Isotope experienced every moment of terror from her victims, the partner's confusion as poison took hold, his wife's screams as radioactive energy consumed her, the children who died not understanding why. When the rider released her, she collapsed, catatonic. The other guards attacked in concert. Super strength, energy manipulation, enhanced speed, all of it thrown at the two intruders. Nolan engaged 3 simultaneously, his Viltrumite combat training evident in every movement. He didn't kill, didn't use lethal force, but he was brutally efficient. Bones broke. Weapons shattered. Within seconds, 3 guards were unconscious. The Ghost Rider's chain whipped through the remaining attackers like a scythe through wheat. Each touch delivered judgment, not the full penance stare, but enough soul-searing contact to drop even enhanced humans. The spirit of vengeance could calibrate his punishment, delivering exactly what each soul deserved. Floor clear, Nolan reported. Moving up. They ascended rapidly, encountering resistance on every level. Machine Head had spared no expense on defense, but money couldn't buy immunity from judgment. Guard after guard fell, their sins weighing them down more effectively than any physical attack. On the 28th floor, they found something different. Civilians. Machine Head's legitimate employees, administrative staff who handled the paperwork that made his criminal empire appear legal. They huddled in offices, terrified as hellfire, and a Viltrumite warrior tore through the building. "Stay down," Nolan commanded, his voice carrying authority. "We're not here for you." But the Ghost Rider paused, his skull turning toward a particular office. Inside, a man in an expensive suit cowered behind a desk. The Rider's supernatural senses detected something, guilt, heavy and specific. "You." The spirit's voice resonated. "Accountant. You have processed payments for 17 assassinations. Laundered money from human trafficking operations. Your spreadsheets have blood on them." The man trembled. "I just handle numbers. I don't know what they're for." "Lies." The Rider advanced. "You know exactly what you're doing. You ensure the money flows. The operations continue. The innocent suffer. Your hands are clean, but your soul is stained." Nolan grabbed the Rider's arm. "He's a civilian, not a combatant." The Ghost Rider's flames flickered as he turned to face the Viltrumite. "He enables evil. That makes him guilty." "Maybe," Nolan acknowledged. "But there's a difference between being guilty and deserving the penance stare. He's cooperating with crimes, but he hasn't personally murdered anyone. His cooperation makes murder possible." "I know," Nolan said quietly. "I enabled an empire's conquests. I know what it means to be part of a system of evil. But if everyone who's ever looked away from injustice deserves judgment, then we'd spend eternity punishing people." The Rider studied Nolan, those empty eye sockets seeming to peer into his soul. "You argue for mercy for this one. Why?" "Because I'm trying to understand mercy myself," Nolan admitted. "You gave me a chance I didn't deserve. Maybe he deserves one too." The Ghost Rider's flames dimmed slightly. After a long moment, he released the accountant. "You have seen what I am, what I do to the guilty. Choose now. Continue serving evil for money, or find redemption through cooperation. The next time I return, your choice will determine your fate." The accountant nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. They reached the penthouse floor to find Machine Head waiting. The crime lord sat behind a massive desk, flanked by his 2 remaining bodyguards, Battle Beast and Black Samson, both heavyweights in the superhuman community. "Gentlemen," Machine Head greeted them with false calm. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm a legitimate businessman. Whatever crimes you think I've committed." 17 murders, the Ghost Rider interrupted. 43 kidnappings. Human trafficking across 6 states. Extortion, torture, corruption of government officials. Your empire is built on suffering. Allegedly, Machine Head countered. None of which has been proven in court. I have lawyers. Rights. You can't just. Nolan moved faster than human eyes could track, appearing directly in front of Machine Head's desk. "Actually, we can. You've hurt too many people. Hidden behind wealth and influence for too long." Machine Head sneered. "And you're the hero now? You, who planned genocide, who confessed to conquering 17 worlds." He laughed. "You're no better than me." "You're right," Nolan agreed. "I'm not better than you. I'm worse. I've killed more, destroyed more, caused more suffering than you could in 100 lifetimes." His hands clenched into fists. "But I'm trying to change, to be better. And that starts with stopping people like you." Battle Beast stepped forward, his bestial features twisted in a savage grin. Finally, a real fight. The alien warrior was massive, covered in fur and muscle, wielding weapons designed for killing. He'd fought across a dozen worlds, seeking worthy opponents. Nolan represented exactly what he craved. "Stand down," Nolan warned. "I don't want to hurt you, but I want to hurt you." Battle Beast growled, lunging forward. The impact when they collided shattered windows across 3 floors. Battle Beast was strong, phenomenally strong, but Nolan had centuries of experience. They exchanged blows that would have killed lesser beings, crashed through walls, fought with savage intensity. Black Samson engaged the Ghost Rider, his enhanced strength allowing him to actually grapple with the spirit of vengeance. Unlike most opponents, Black Samson had the power to make the fight interesting. "You're strong," the rider acknowledged, deflecting a punch that cratered the floor. "But strength without righteousness is nothing." "I'm protecting my employer," Black Samson replied, landing a solid hit to the rider's skull that would have decapitated anyone else. "That's righteous enough. He pays you to enable his crimes. You know what he is, what he does." The rider's chain wrapped around Black Samson's arm. "Your soul knows the truth, even if you deny it." Their eyes met. The penitent stare showed Black Samson every victim of Machine Head's empire that he'd enabled through his protection. Every kidnapped child he could have saved. Every murdered informant he could have protected. The weight of complicity crushed him, and he fell. Nolan slammed Battle Beast through Machine Head's desk, finally pinning the alien warrior. "Yield. Never." Battle Beast snarled, still trying to fight despite being outmatched. "Then sleep," Nolan said, applying pressure to a nerve cluster. Battle Beast's eyes rolled back, unconscious. Machine Head tried to run, but the Ghost Rider's chain caught his ankle. The crime lord crashed to the floor, expensive suit tearing. "No, you can't do this. I have lawyers. I have rights." "You have sins," the Ghost Rider corrected, dragging him closer. "And now you will experience what you've inflicted on others." "Wait," Nolan interrupted. "Let the system handle him. We have evidence. Now his guards will testify. His records are exposed. Let him face human justice." The rider's flames blazed brighter. Human justice is slow, imperfect. He could escape through wealth and influence. "Maybe," Nolan conceded. "But that's the risk of a just system. We can't be judge, jury, and executioner. That's what I was going to do. Impose Viltrum's justice through force. We have to be better than that." The Ghost Rider stared at Machine Head's trembling form, then at Nolan. "You ask me to restrain judgment, to trust in a system that has failed these victims repeatedly. I'm asking you to give humanity a chance to do the right thing," Nolan replied. "And if they fail, if he escapes justice through corruption, then you come back. Then you judge him." The spirit of vengeance was silent for a long moment. Finally, the chain released Machine Head. "One chance," the rider declared. "If human justice fails, I will return. And there will be no mercy." Sirens wailed below as GDA forces surrounded the building. Cecil's voice crackled through the security system. "This is the GDA. Stand down and prepare for custody transfer." Nolan looked at the Ghost Rider. "Will you?" "I answer to no government," the rider replied. "But I will not interfere. For now." They departed through different exits, Nolan through the front to face GDA custody voluntarily, the Ghost Rider through flames that opened like a doorway and closed behind him, leaving no trace. Machine Head was arrested, his empire dismantled. The evidence was overwhelming, his guards turning informant to avoid the Ghost Rider's judgment. For once, the system worked. But across the city, criminals watched and learned. There was a new force in play. One that couldn't be bought, couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be stopped. And it was hunting. The aftermath of Machine Head's fall sent ripples through the criminal underworld. Within 24 hours, 3 major crime bosses fled the city. Within 48, underground operations went silent. By the end of the week, Chicago had the lowest violent crime rate it had seen in 30 years. Fear was a powerful motivator. Cecil Stedman stood in his office, reviewing footage of the Machine Head raid. The Ghost Rider and Omni-Man working together, an unholy alliance that had proven devastatingly effective. But it raised questions he couldn't ignore. "Sir," Donald entered without knocking. "We have a situation." "Another one?" Cecil didn't look up from his monitors. "Different kind. The Viltrumite Empire has made contact." That got Cecil's attention. "Explain." Donald pulled up a transmission log. A probe entered Earth's orbit 30 minutes ago. It broadcasted a single message in multiple languages, including English. He hesitated. They're asking about Omni-Man. Cecil's jaw tightened. Play it. The message was brief and cold. Agent Nolan of Viltrum has failed to report. Status inquiry required. Respond within 48 hours or compliance measures will be initiated. Compliance measures, Cecil repeated. That's a hell of a euphemism. Intel suggests it means they'll send an investigation team, Donald said. Possibly warriors to either retrieve Omni-Man or complete his mission. How many warriors? Unknown. But based on what we know about Viltrumite capabilities. Donald trailed off. They both knew one Viltrumite had nearly been unstoppable. Multiple Viltrumites would be apocalyptic. Cecil made a decision. Get me Omni-Man. And the Ghost Rider, if you can find him. Sir, the Rider doesn't exactly. I know. But he has a way of showing up when he's needed. Send the message anyway. An hour later, Nolan stood in GDA headquarters, surrounded by armed guards that both knew were useless. He'd surrendered voluntarily after the Machine Head incident, accepting house arrest while the government figured out what to do with him. They're coming, Cecil said without preamble, showing him the message. Nolan's face went pale, the first time Cecil had seen genuine fear in the Viltrumite. How many? That's what I'm asking you. Nolan sat heavily. For a failed agent? Probably 3. Maybe 5 if they consider Earth a high-priority target. He looked up. You don't understand. 1 Viltrumite is dangerous. 3 working together could level your civilization in weeks. Even with you helping us. Even with me. Nolan's voice was hollow. I know their tactics, their weaknesses, what few they have. But I'm one against many, and I'm... He struggled for words. The penance stare changed me. I can't fight the way I used to. Can't tap into that ruthless efficiency without seeing the faces of everyone I've killed. Then we need an equalizer, Cecil said. As if summoned, hellfire erupted in the corner of the room. Guards raised weapons reflexively, but Cecil waved them down. The Ghost Rider emerged from the flames, his motorcycle somehow present despite the indoor location. You called. The spirit's layered voice resonated. I heard your fear. Felt it across the city. What threatens this world? Cecil explained the situation. The rider listened silently, those empty eye sockets betraying no emotion. Viltrumites, the rider finally said. Warriors from the same empire that sent this one. His skull turned toward Nolan. Your people are coming to finish what you could not. Yes, Nolan admitted. And they won't hesitate. Won't doubt. They'll execute the mission perfectly. Can you stop them? Cecil asked the rider directly. The Ghost Rider's flames flickered. The penance stare affects souls. Viltrumites have souls. They can be judged. He paused. But they are warriors trained from birth, conditioned to believe their conquests are righteous, breaking through centuries of indoctrination. You broke through mine, Nolan said quietly. You were already breaking. Your son, your wife, they had created cracks in your certainty. I merely shattered what was already fracturing. The rider stepped closer. Will these others have such doubts? Nolan shook his head. They'll be true believers, convinced that Viltrum brings order to chaos, that conquest is mercy. They won't question. Then the penance stare may not be enough, the rider acknowledged. What about your other powers? Donald asked. The hellfire, the supernatural strength, effective against humans and Earth-based threats, against beings with Viltrumite durability. The rider's skull tilted. Unknown. I have never faced enemies quite like this. Cecil pulled up tactical displays. Then we need a strategy. We have 2 days before they arrive. They're already here, the Ghost Rider interrupted. Everyone froze. I sense them. 3 souls, powerful and ancient, approaching from orbit. They will be here within the hour. Alarms blared through the facility, confirming the rider's warning. Satellites tracked 3 objects entering Earth's atmosphere, moving faster than anything human-made. Guardians mobilize. Cecil commanded through the facility-wide comm. This is not a drill. Viltrumite invasion force incoming. Nolan stood, and for the first time since his confession, he looked like Omni-Man again. Not the hero who'd lied, but a warrior preparing for battle. I'll meet them. Try to talk them down first. They won't listen, Cecil said. No, Nolan agreed. But I have to try. If there's any chance they'll abort the mission, return to Viltrum and report Earth as too costly to conquer. There is no such chance, a new voice interrupted. Everyone turned as a figure phased through the wall, not the Ghost Rider's hellfire, but molecular manipulation. A Viltrumite materialized, his costume white and crimson, his expression cold and calculating. Conquest, Nolan breathed. The Viltrumite, called Conquest, smiled without warmth. Hello, Nolan. The Empire is disappointed in you. 2 more Viltrumites crashed through the ceiling. 1 male, 1 female, both radiating deadly intent. The male wore black and gray. The female's costume was deep purple. Thrag sent his regards, the female said, along with orders to complete your mission or execute you for failure. Guards opened fire immediately. Bullets bounced off Viltrumite flesh harmlessly. Conquest moved faster than human eyes could track, disarming the entire security team in seconds without killing anyone. Impressive restraint, the Ghost Rider observed. Conquest turned to face him, curiosity flickering across his features. And what are you supposed to be? Some kind of Earth defender? I am Judgment, the Rider replied. And you are guilty. Conquest laughed. Guilty? We bring order to chaos. Peace through strength. We are civilization's greatest champions. You are conquerors who dress conquest in noble words, the Rider corrected. Your empire is built on the bones of civilizations you've destroyed. Your order is tyranny. Your peace is the silence of the conquered. The smile faded from Conquest's face. Strong words for a creature made of bone and fire. Let's see if you can back them up. He moved with Viltrumite speed, fist aimed directly at the Rider's skull. The impact should have shattered bone, should have sent the Ghost Rider flying. Instead, Conquest's fist stopped dead, caught in the Rider's skeletal hand. Strength without righteousness, the spirit's voice echoed, is just brutality. Hellfire erupted around both their hands. Conquest's eyes widened, not in pain, but in surprise. The fire didn't burn his flesh, but he felt something else. Something that touched deeper than physical sensation. What is this? Conquest demanded, trying to pull away. This is your soul recognizing truth, the Rider replied. Look into my eyes. No, Nolan shouted, launching himself between them. Ghost Rider, wait. If you hit him with the full penance stare, he will face what he's done, the Rider finished. He'll also become useless in the fight, Nolan countered. And we need every warrior we can get. The other 2 Viltrumites attacked simultaneously. The male went for the Ghost Rider, the female for Nolan. The GDA facility exploded into chaos as superhuman beings clashed with force that shattered concrete and twisted steel. Cecil's team evacuated rapidly, Donald coordinating the retreat. They'd built this facility to contain superhuman threats, but not for Viltrumites, and whatever the Ghost Rider was. The Rider released Conquest, his chain whipping out to catch the male Viltrumite mid-flight. The alien warrior crashed into a wall with enough force to crater it. He emerged, mostly unharmed, confusion evident on his face. That chain, what is it made of? Judgment, the Rider replied simply. Nolan grappled with the female Viltrumite, matching her strength but not her ruthlessness. She fought to kill, he fought to subdue. The difference showed as she drove him through 3 walls. You've gone soft, Nolan, she taunted. Earth has made you weak. No, Nolan gasped, blocking a punch that would have taken his head off. It made me see clearly. Conquest recovered, analyzing the situation. The Ghost Rider was an unknown factor. His chain seemed to affect them in ways conventional weapons couldn't. The facility was compromised. They needed a different approach. Withdrawal, Conquest commanded. New strategy required. The 3 Viltrumites departed through the ceiling faster than conventional weapons could track, leaving destruction and questions in their wake. The Ghost Rider stood among the rubble, his flames burning low. They will return, with better tactics, more force. I know, Nolan said, limping slightly. Even Viltrumites could be hurt, given enough punishment. They're testing us, learning our capabilities. Cecil emerged from the secure bunker. Then we need to hit them first, before they're ready. How? Nolan asked. They could be anywhere. The Ghost Rider's skull turned eastward. No, they are close. I sense their souls, their guilt. His flames intensified. And I know where they will strike next. Where? Cecil demanded. Where they can do the most damage with minimal resistance. Where Earth's defenders cannot quickly respond. The rider mounted his motorcycle. They will attack population centers, create casualties to force compliance. New York, Cecil breathed. The largest concentration of civilians. We must stop them, Nolan said. The Ghost Rider nodded. Then we hunt. No more waiting for them to strike. We become the aggressors. Nolan and the spirit of vengeance departed into the sky, an impossible alliance racing against time. In New York, millions of people went about their day, unaware that 3 Viltrumite warriors were planning an attack that would change everything. And somewhere in the darkness, the Ghost Rider's hellfire burned with purpose. Judgment was coming. Times Square at midnight, a place that never truly slept. Tourists snapped photos beneath blazing advertisements. Street performers entertained crowds. Thousands of people occupying a few city blocks, vulnerable and oblivious. Perfect for what the Viltrumites planned. Conquest hovered 1,000 feet above, his 2 companions flanking him. Below, humanity went about its insignificant existence, unaware of the judgment about to fall. The directive is clear, Conquest said. Sufficient casualties to force governmental surrender. We strike the population center, withdraw before their heroes can respond. Repeat until compliance is achieved. Seems wasteful, the female Anissa observed. Earth has potential. Why not subjugate them properly? Because Nolan failed, the male Lucan replied. Now we demonstrate the cost of resistance. Standard protocol. Conquest raised his hand, preparing to signal the attack. 1 supersonic descent, 1 devastating impact. Hundreds would die instantly. Thousands more in the resulting chaos. His hand never fell. Hellfire erupted between them as the Ghost Rider materialized from nothing, his motorcycle somehow existing in midair. The chain lashed out, wrapping around Conquest's wrist and yanking him away from his formation. Your attack ends before it begins. The spirit's voice resonated across the sky. Nolan appeared from above, hitting Lucan with enough force to send both of them cratering into an empty rooftop. Anissa dove after them, but the Ghost Rider's chain caught her ankle, holding her suspended. What are you? She demanded, trying to break free. Her Viltrumite strength strained against supernatural metal that shouldn't exist. I am what you have never faced before, the rider replied. Consequences. Below, people pointed at the sky. Phones captured the impossible sight. A flaming skeleton on a motorcycle floating in midair, fighting beings that looked human but moved like gods. Conquest recovered quickly, analyzing this new threat. The Ghost Rider defied physics. His motorcycle had no propulsion, yet remained airborne. His chain was impossibly strong. And those flames. You're not from this world, Conquest said. Not originally. No, the rider confirmed. I am from a place where evil faces judgment, where the guilty cannot hide behind power or purpose. We serve the greatest empire in the galaxy, Conquest countered. Our purpose is righteous. We bring order to. Silence. The Ghost Rider's flames intensified. I have heard these justifications before. From Nolan, before I showed him truth. From every conqueror who ever convinced himself that slaughter was salvation. He pulled Anissa closer, despite her struggling. You have participated in the conquest of 14 worlds. Killed tens of thousands. Justified it all in Viltrum's name. His empty eye sockets blazed. Look into my eyes. No. Conquest lunged forward, but the rider's free hand caught him by the throat. Both of you, the spirit commanded. Face what you are. The penance stare activated simultaneously on both Viltrumites. Conquest experienced every life he'd taken, not as a warrior remembers battles, but as his victims experienced their deaths. The terror of civilians watching their city burn. The agony of warriors fighting hopelessly against overwhelming force. The despair of parents dying while their children screamed. Anissa felt every moment of suffering she'd inflicted. The worlds conquered. The resistances crushed. The acceptable casualties that had names and faces and families. All of it compressed into seconds that felt eternal. When the rider released them, both Viltrumites floated motionless, their eyes wide with shock and horror. What did you do?" Anissa whispered. "I showed you the truth your empire has trained you to ignore," the Ghost Rider replied. "The cost of your order. The price of your righteousness." On the rooftop, Nolan and Lucan fought with savage intensity. Lucan was skilled, ruthless, everything a Viltrumite warrior should be. But Nolan fought with something Lucan didn't understand. Desperation born not from fear of defeat, but fear of what would happen if he failed. "You've betrayed everything," Lucan snarled, driving Nolan through a water tower. "The Empire. Your people. Your purpose." "I betrayed a lie," Nolan countered, emerging from the wreckage. "Viltrum isn't bringing peace. It's spreading tyranny dressed as civilization. You're weak." Lucan hit him hard enough to crack ribs. "Corrupted by these primitives." "No." Nolan caught Lucan's next punch. "I was corrupted by Viltrum. Earth helped me see it." He threw Lucan skyward, following fast. They exchanged blows at altitude, each impact creating sonic booms. Below, the GDA scrambled to evacuate Times Square, though most civilians were already fleeing the superhuman battle. The Ghost Rider still held Conquest and Anissa, his chain binding them both. They weren't struggling anymore. The penance stare had left them reeling, minds overwhelmed by centuries of denied guilt. "You feel it now," the Rider said. "The weight Nolan carries. The burden of knowing what you've done." We were following orders," Conquest managed. "Serving the Empire. Orders do not absolve you. Service does not erase sin." The Rider's flames dimmed slightly. But recognition is the first step toward redemption. Redemption. Anissa's voice cracked. "For what we've done, that's impossible." "Perhaps," the Rider acknowledged. "But the attempt matters." Nolan chose to try. To atone for the unatonable. You can make the same choice. Conquest's tactical mind was recovering, processing. "You're asking us to betray Viltrum, to turn against everything we are." "I'm asking you to become something better than what you were," the Ghost Rider corrected. "To protect instead of conquer. To serve justice instead of empire." "And if we refuse?" The hellfire intensified, burning hotter without consuming. "Then I show the universe that even Viltrumites can burn. That power without conscience is nothing before judgment." Above them, Nolan and Lucan's fight reached its climax. They grappled at terminal velocity, plummeting toward the city. At the last moment, Nolan twisted, taking the impact himself. They crashed into an intersection, thankfully evacuated, with force that shattered pavement for a block. Lucan recovered first, standing over Nolan's prone form. "You were our best, Nolan. Our most efficient agent. And you threw it away for these animals." "They're not animals," Nolan gasped, struggling to rise. "They're people. Flawed, mortal, beautiful people. And they deserve to be free." "They deserve to serve the Empire," Lucan corrected, raising his fist for a killing blow. A chain wrapped around his arm, stopping it mid-descent. The Ghost Rider had descended, still holding Conquest and Anissa with supernatural strength that shouldn't be possible. "Enough," the spirit commanded. "Your warrior faces a choice, Viltrumite. Join him in seeking redemption or face what he faced." Lucan looked at Conquest and Anissa, seeing their shocked expressions. Something had changed in them, something profound and terrible. "What did you do to them?" "I showed them truth," the Rider replied. "The same truth I showed Nolan. The same truth I will show you." "I don't want your truth." Lucan snarled, breaking free from the chain through sheer force. "I serve Viltrum. That is enough." He launched himself at the Ghost Rider with all his Viltrumite might. The impact should have been devastating. Instead, the rider caught him effortlessly, skeletal hands gripping the warrior's head. "Then you will learn the hard way," the spirit said. The penance stare hit Lucan like a supernova. Every world conquered, every life taken, every moment of suffering inflicted in Viltrum's name. The full weight of his sins crashed down in 3 eternal seconds. When the Ghost Rider released him, Lucan fell. Not physically, Viltrumites didn't fall from simple drops. But spiritually, mentally, his absolute certainty shattered into a million guilty pieces. "No," Lucan whispered. "No, no, no." The 4 Viltrumites, 3 broken, 1 already broken, floated or stood among the wreckage. The Ghost Rider surveyed them with flames that somehow conveyed both judgment and something that might have been sympathy. "You have a choice now," the spirit declared. "Return to Viltrum. Report that Earth is defended by forces beyond your understanding. Recommend they abandon this conquest. Or stay, atone, become the heroes you pretended to be." "The Empire won't accept failure," Conquest said quietly. "They'll send more warriors. Stronger ones." "Then you'll help us stop them," Nolan said, climbing to his feet. "Use your knowledge, your strength, to protect Earth instead of conquering it." "And if more Viltrumites come?" Anissa asked. "If Thrag himself arrives?" The Ghost Rider's flames blazed brighter. "Then I will show the Empire's regent what true power looks like. What judgment means. Even the strongest warrior is nothing before the spirit of vengeance." Lucan looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I've killed so many, destroyed so much. How do we even begin to make that right?" "One choice at a time," Nolan replied. "One act of protection instead of conquest. One life saved instead of taken." He looked at the Ghost Rider. "That's what he taught me. Redemption isn't a destination. It's a direction." The Ghost Rider nodded. "The path is long. The burden is heavy. But it is a path nonetheless." Sirens wailed as emergency services arrived. The Guardians descended from the sky, Immortal, War Woman, and others, ready to fight. They stopped, seeing 4 Viltrumites standing peacefully among the rubble. "What's happening here?" the Immortal demanded. "Judgment," the Ghost Rider replied. "And mercy, in equal measure." The world had changed in the span of a single night. Ghost Rider stood atop the ruins of the Guardians' headquarters, hellfire still flickering in the cracks, where Omni-Man's fists had shattered steel and stone. Below, emergency vehicles carved rivers of red and blue light through the darkness. News helicopters maintained a cautious distance, their cameras trained on the burning skull that had become the most recognizable and feared image on the planet. Omni-Man knelt 30 feet away, his iconic white costume torn and scorched. Blood, Viltrumite blood, stained the concrete beneath him. The penance stare had stripped away more than his lies. It had flayed his soul bare, forced him to experience every scream of every world he'd helped conquer, every child who'd watched their parents die under Viltrumite boots, every civilization erased to feed an empire's pride. He was broken, not dead. Ghost Rider had made a choice in that final moment, but fundamentally, irreparably broken. "The Viltrumite Empire will come," Omni-Man said, his voice a hoarse shadow of its former authority. His eyes remained fixed on the ground, unable to meet the spirit of vengeance's burning gaze again. "When they learn what happened here, when they discover I've failed, they'll send warriors who won't hesitate, who won't have the weakness I developed." Johnny Blaze's voice emerged from the flames, distorted by the rider's presence, but carrying human inflection for the first time since his arrival. "Then let them come. You don't understand." Omni-Man's hands trembled. "I've seen you fight. I've felt your power. But the Empire has thousands like me. Some older, some stronger, and they won't face you one at a time." Ghost Rider descended from his perch, hellfire chain dragging behind him with a sound like screaming metal. The spirit of vengeance had judged Omni-Man and found him guilty of atrocities that spanned centuries. But the rider had also seen something else in those final moments of the penance stare. Genuine horror at what he'd become, a flicker of the man who'd fallen in love with a human woman and raised a son who believed in heroism. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but the potential for both, buried under mountains of blood and lies. You will help defend this world, Ghost Rider said, each word accompanied by embers drifting from his skull. Not as a hero, not as a protector, as penance. Omni-Man finally looked up, confusion breaking through the shell shock in his eyes. Why? You could kill me. You should kill me. I've done. The spirit of vengeance knows what you've done. Ghost Rider's voice dropped to something almost resembling human sympathy. Every life, every world, every child. But vengeance serves the living, not the dead. And the living need a weapon against what's coming. Mark Grayson chose that moment to land on a rooftop, his own costume torn and bloodied from trying to intervene in a battle between forces he couldn't comprehend. The young half-Viltrumite had spent the last hour watching his father, his hero, get systematically destroyed by a creature that shouldn't exist. Stay back, Mark, Omni-Man warned, but there was no strength behind it. Invincible ignored him, positioning himself between Ghost Rider and his father. I don't know what you are, Mark said, fists clenched despite knowing they'd accomplished nothing against this demon. But if you're going to kill him, you'll have to go through me. Ghost Rider studied the boy. The spirit of vengeance saw what Omni-Man saw, a son defending a monster. But Johnny Blaze saw something different. A kid who'd just watched his world collapse, who'd learned his father was a mass murderer, and still couldn't abandon him. That wasn't naive heroism. That was the kind of strength empires couldn't breed. Your father lives, Ghost Rider said, but not as he was. The rider raised one skeletal hand, and hellfire chains erupted from the concrete, wrapping around Omni-Man's wrists and throat. The Viltrumite didn't resist as the mystical bindings seared his flesh, embedding themselves into his very essence. These chains are bound to your soul, Ghost Rider explained. They will burn if you attempt to leave Earth. They will tighten if you harm the innocent. And if you ever forget what you've done, if you ever try to reclaim the lie of heroism, they will drag you to judgment again. Omni-Man tested the chains once, feeling their weight settle into him like a second skeleton. How long? Until the Empire comes. Until the threat is ended. Ghost Rider turned away, his motorcycle roaring to life from nowhere, hellfire wheels already spinning. Or until you've saved as many lives as you've taken, whichever comes first. That's impossible, Omni-Man whispered. I've killed billions. Then you'd better start. Ghost Rider mounted the bike, the engine's growl resonating with supernatural fury. The boy will watch you. The world will watch you. And I will be watching. Mark moved to his father's side as Ghost Rider prepared to leave. Wait, the young hero called out. Who are you? Why did you really spare him? The spirit of vengeance looked back one final time, hellfire eyes meeting Mark's human ones. For a moment, Johnny Blaze broke through completely, his voice carrying the weight of his own damnation. Because I know what it's like to be a weapon someone else made, he said. And I know that choosing to be something different is the hardest battle you'll ever fight. Your father just started his. Make sure he finishes it. Then Ghost Rider was gone, the motorcycle launching off the rooftop in a trail of flame that carved across the night sky. He didn't head for the horizon or disappear into some dimensional portal. Instead, he rode through the city, a blazing specter that wove between buildings and streets, making sure every camera, every witness, every person who'd grown comfortable with the idea of invincible heroes saw him clearly. The message was simple. Earth had a new guardian. One that couldn't be killed, couldn't be reasoned with, and couldn't be corrupted. One that judged not by law or politics, but by the weight of souls and the currency of sin. Cecil Stedman watched the Ghost Rider's path from the GDA command center, his tactical mind already calculating the implications. The organization had protocols for alien invasions, dimensional breaches, and rogue superhumans. They had nothing for a literal spirit of vengeance. Get me everything, he ordered his team. Every myth, every legend, every scrap of information about spirits, demons, and divine judgment. If that thing decides we're guilty, I want to know if we have any options beyond praying. On screens around the world, the same footage played on repeat. Ghost Rider standing over a defeated Omni-Man, hellfire reflecting in pools of blood, delivering judgment to someone everyone had believed was invincible. The image would define a generation's understanding of power. Heroes weren't invincible, but vengeance might be. Ghost Rider rode into the darkness beyond the city limits, finally allowing the rider's fury to recede enough for Johnny Blaze to think clearly. He'd made a choice tonight that the spirit of vengeance didn't fully approve of. Mercy for a mass murderer, pragmatism over absolute judgment. But Johnny had learned something in his years carrying this curse. Vengeance without wisdom was just destruction. Omni-Man alive and chained to penance was worth more than Omni-Man dead when an empire of his kind came calling. And they would come. Ghost Rider had seen it in Nolan's memories during the penance stare. The pride of the Viltrumite Empire, the inevitability of their expansion, the cold calculation that treated entire species as resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. Let them come. The spirit of vengeance had judged countless sinners across dimensions and realities. But it had never judged an empire, never unleashed hellfire on a cosmic scale. The Viltrumites would learn what humanity's protectors had learned tonight. That some forces transcended physical law, that guilt had weight in the universe, that vengeance, true vengeance, couldn't be conquered by strength or speed or invulnerability. Ghost Rider's Hellfire motorcycle left burning tracks across the highway, a trail that wouldn't fade for hours. A reminder, a warning, a promise. In a universe of invincible conquerors, the rider remained. The world had always believed in heroes, champions who stood between humanity and the darkness, who sacrificed themselves for the greater good, who inspired hope in the face of impossible odds. Omni-Man had been that symbol, the pinnacle of heroism, the invincible guardian no threat could overcome. Ghost Rider shattered that illusion in a single night of hellfire and judgment. Now Earth knew a different truth, that heroism was a lie told by conquerors, that invincibility was a mask worn by monsters, and that justice, real justice, came not from strength, but from the weight of souls measured against the sins they carried. Omni-Man would spend years bound by mystical chains, fighting to redeem billions of deaths he could never truly atone for. Mark Grayson would grow into his power, carrying the knowledge that legacy was earned, not inherited, and that being truly invincible meant facing the truth no matter how it burned. The GDA would restructure its entire understanding of threats, acknowledging that some forces operated beyond the physics and tactics they'd relied on. And Ghost Rider would ride through cities that feared him, across highways where criminals whispered his name like a curse, into the darkness where evil hid behind masks of respectability and power. The spirit of vengeance had found a universe that desperately needed judgment. A reality where the strongest beings were often the most guilty, where empires built on blood called themselves civilizations, where conquest masqueraded as heroism. When the Viltrumite Empire finally came, and it would come, they would face an enemy unlike any they'd encountered in their millennia of expansion. Not a hero they could break, not a world they could conquer, but a force as eternal and inevitable as guilt itself. In a universe of invincible conquerors, vengeance itself could not be conquered. The rider would make certain they understood that truth. Written in hellfire across the stars,